What happens when a humanitarian mission turns into a nightmare of international proportions? In the heart of Africa, 3 young Americans find themselves facing death row after a failed coup attempt in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Their fate hangs in the balance as diplomats scramble and families plead for mercy. This is the story of a mission gone wrong, a father's betrayal, and a fight for survival that has captured the world's attention. The journey that led 3 Americans to a Congolese military tribunal began with a father's misguided ambition. Christian Malanga, a man who had fled the Democratic Republic of Congo years ago, harbored dreams of overthrowing the government he left behind. His son Marcel, raised in Utah, knew little of his father's radical plans. In early 2024, Christian reached out to Marcel with an enticing offer, a chance to reconnect and help build wells in rural Africa. Marcel, eager to know the father he'd barely seen, invited his high school football teammate, Tyler Thompson, to join what seemed like a humanitarian adventure. Enter Benjamin Zalman Poland, a 36-year-old with business ties to Christian. He too was lured by the promise of a noble cause, albeit with financial motivations. What none of them realized was that Christian's true intentions were far more sinister. As they arrived in Kinshasa, the capital humming with political tension, Marcel and Tyler found themselves swept into a plot they neither understood nor agreed to. Christian's humanitarian facade quickly crumbled, revealing a man consumed by delusions of political grandeur. By the time the young Americans grasped the gravity of their situation, it was too late. They were unwitting pawns in a dangerous game of power, about to witness firsthand the violent birth of a failed revolution. The night of May 19, 2024 began like any other in Kinshasa, but it would soon erupt into chaos. As darkness fell, Christian Malanga and his group of rebels set their plan in motion. Their first target, the home of Vital Kamerhe, a senior politician allied with President Tshisekedi. The rebels, armed and dressed in military fatigues, stormed Kamerhe's residence. Gunfire echoed through the streets as they overpowered the guards and forced their way inside. Kamerhe fortunately wasn't home. From there, the group made their way to the presidential complex in the city center. Christian Malanga, high on adrenaline, live-streamed part of the attack. "This is the dawn of a new Congo," he proclaimed, his voice filled with misplaced confidence, but the coup was doomed from the start. Within hours, Congolese government forces mobilized, quickly overwhelming the rebels. The sound of gunfire intensified as loyalist troops engaged the insurgents. In the chaos, Marcel, Tyler, and Benjamin realized the gravity of their situation. Panic-stricken, they fled, attempting to escape across the Congo River. But their freedom was short-lived. As dawn broke, the 3 Americans found themselves in custody, their fate now in the hands of the very government they had unwittingly helped to attack. The scene inside Ndolo military prison was surreal. A large, khaki-green tent served as the makeshift courtroom, a stark reminder that this was no ordinary trial. The military tribunal, led by Major Freddie Ihum, exuded an air of finality that sent chills down the spines of the accused. For Marcel, Tyler, and Benjamin, the proceedings were a bewildering nightmare. The language barrier proved to be a significant obstacle. As the court conducted business in French and Lingala, the 3 Americans struggled to comprehend the charges against them. Intermittent and often faulty translations left them feeling lost and vulnerable. But the language barrier was just the tip of the iceberg. As the trial progressed, disturbing allegations of torture emerged. The defendants claimed they had been beaten and coerced into confessing. Their lawyers argued that these confessions, extracted under duress, should be inadmissible. The courtroom atmosphere was tense, with armed guards standing at attention, their presence a constant reminder of the high stakes involved. As each day passed, it became increasingly clear that this trial was about more than just justice. It was a political statement, a show of force by a government determined to crush any hint of rebellion. The courtroom fell silent as Major Freddie Ihum delivered the verdict, guilty on all charges. For Marcel Malanga, Tyler Thompson, and Benjamin Zalman Poland, the world seemed to stop. The sentence, death. A collective gasp echoed through the makeshift tribunal. Back in the United States, the families of the 3 men were devastated. Marcel's mother collapsed upon hearing the news, while Tyler's parents clung to each other in disbelief. Benjamin's sister, fighting back tears, vowed to continue the fight for her brother's life. The U.S. State Department swiftly condemned the verdict, calling it deeply concerning and citing the lack of due process. They urged the DRC to adhere to international legal standards and hinted at diplomatic consequences if the sentences were carried out. Human rights organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch decried the trial as fundamentally flawed. They pointed to allegations of torture, forced confessions, and inadequate legal representation as grounds for an immediate retrial. As the news spread, protests erupted outside DRC embassies worldwide. The international community watched closely, wondering if diplomacy could save these 3 young Americans from a fate they never imagined when they first set foot in Kinshasa. The verdict sent shockwaves through the international community. Human rights organizations were quick to condemn the trial and its outcome. Amnesty International called it a gross miscarriage of justice, while Human Rights Watch demanded an immediate retrial, citing numerous procedural violations. The U.S. State Department's response was swift and stern. In a press conference, the Secretary of State expressed deep concern over the death sentences and questioned the fairness of the trial. Behind the scenes, diplomatic channels were working overtime. High-level talks between U.S. and DRC officials began almost immediately. The U.S. ambassador to the DRC was seen entering the foreign ministry in Kinshasa multiple times over the following days. Sources close to the negotiations revealed that the U.S. was pushing for a commutation of the sentences, offering diplomatic and economic incentives in return. Meanwhile, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights issued a statement urging the DRC to reconsider the death sentences, emphasizing the international community's opposition to capital punishment, especially in cases with due process concerns. As diplomatic efforts intensified, public pressure mounted. Protests erupted outside DRC embassies in several countries, and a social media campaign demanding justice for the 3 Americans gained traction globally. As the dust settled from the shocking verdict, the legal battle for the lives of Marcel, Tyler, and Benjamin began in earnest. The defense team, facing an uphill struggle within the DRC's complex legal system, filed appeals immediately. They argued passionately that the trial had been fundamentally flawed, citing allegations of torture and forced confessions. The lawyers emphasized the young Americans' naivety, claiming they were unwitting pawns in a plot they never fully understood. They presented evidence of coercion, highlighting the language barriers that had hampered their clients' ability to defend themselves adequately. But the DRC's legal system, known for its susceptibility to political influence, posed significant challenges. The appeals process moved slowly, each delay potentially bringing the 3 closer to their fate. As international pressure mounted, the question remained: would justice prevail, or would political considerations overshadow the pursuit of truth in this high-stakes legal battle? As the appeals process entered its final stages, the clock was ticking for Marcel, Tyler, and Benjamin. Every second counted in this desperate race against time. Diplomatic channels were working overtime, with U.S. officials making last-ditch efforts to sway the Congolese government. The families of the 3 Americans held their breath, hoping for a miracle. The potential outcomes were stark. Best-case scenario, the death sentences would be commuted to life imprisonment, opening the door for future negotiations. Worst case, the original verdict would stand, leaving the 3 young men facing execution. The tension was palpable as everyone waited for the appeals court's decision. Meanwhile, international pressure continued to mount. Human rights organizations rallied support, and social media campaigns gained momentum. But would it be enough to save these 3 lives caught in a geopolitical storm? The world watched and waited, knowing that the next few hours could determine the fate of Marcel, Tyler, and Benjamin. As we await the final verdict, the fate of Marcel, Tyler, and Benjamin hangs in the balance. Will justice prevail, or will politics seal their fate? What would you do if you were in their shoes? Join us next time as we uncover the shocking conclusion to this international drama. Until then, keep questioning, keep listening, and remember, in the world of crime, nothing is ever as it seems.